Hello, my name is David Tattersfield, and in this short video I just wanted to show Western Front Association members some of the interesting aspects that can be found on the pension record cards available via the WFA website. So what we'll do is just log into the WFA Folk 3 library in the normal way and start to do a couple of searches. The first search that I want to do is for somebody called George North. So what we'll do is just put his details into the boxes here, and here we have George North's record card. So what's particularly interesting here is the fact that we have his surname and Christian name and regiment, etc., but the date and cause of death is very interestingly given as heart failure whilst under anaesthetic. So that is a particularly unusual card, or ledger should I say, that can be found. Right, so the next example I want to show you is another card here for somebody called Andrew Annan. So we'll just put his details into the search engine here. And what we have is 4 pages of record on the face of it for Andrew Annan. So looking at page 1, looks fairly standard on the face of it. Andrew Annan of the Labour Corps, lived in Paisley. So we'll just pop to page 2, which shows a blank page in terms of the awards of pension gratuity or weekly allowance. This is where the post-war medical boards are often shown. But what is interesting here is the 3rd page, which says urgent stop. So what is going on here is really anybody's guess, but this is just an example of what can be attached to these ledgers. Quite often you see changes in location, a movement from one region to another, but in this particular instance there is obviously a note here to say that somebody wants to see the file urgently. The 4th page on this particular card is just blank. It's the reverse of that stop card. So the next example I want to provide here is another ledger for somebody called Lieutenant or Second Lieutenant Barlow. So I've typed in the details here, and as you can see we've got a result for Second Lieutenant Barlow. Now the point here is that these ledgers do not provide details of officers, but there are just a few, half a dozen or so examples. So if you were to search under Lieutenant and Second Lieutenant, you might occasionally come to an example such as this, which is William Howard Barlow of the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, who was killed in action on the 2nd of May 1917. A little bit of searching has provided information that suggests that he was commissioned either 24 or 48 hours before he was killed, which might explain how somehow we do actually have an example of a ledger here for an officer. But as I say, this is really an exception to the rule, which is there are no officers within the ledgers that the WFA have saved here. Right, so the next example I want to provide is one of the rare examples of a damaged ledger that isn't perhaps in the most pristine state, but there are reasons for this. So I'm going to tap in here Moran 41479, and what we'll find here is his ledger. Now this looks a little bit dog-eared, and that is simply because, as you can see in the top corner here, this is page 1 of ledger 330. So with it being page 1, what seems to have happened is that this has actually got stuck to the cover of the ledger book and has been slightly damaged as a result of the 100 years of attachment to the very first page of the cover of the ledger book. So under normal circumstances these images are pretty pristine, but unfortunately on this example we have here there is a little bit of damage, which I hope people will forgive and accept as one of the consequences of the storage that has been undertaken by the Ministry of Defence. Right, so I've now got another example of another ledger that I want to show you, which is for somebody called Heggie, whose regimental number is 625561, and this is interesting for two reasons. First of all, on the face of it, there are 42 matches here, all of the same man, James Heggie 625561. There is actually a reason why we've got so many pages, which is slightly complicated, but let's just have a look at just one of these pages. And what we can see here is that we've got, as I say, 42 pages of record, but if we scroll along the bottom here, all will be revealed in a moment. So we find the very first page for James Heggie, and I'll first of all show here that this is an extreme example of a series of file movements, which is quite remarkable that this page is covered by annotations by the Ministry of Pensions showing that the file has been very active indeed. And it goes on onto the second page over leaf, showing further file movements 1929 into 1931 here. But this is not the reason why there are 42 pages here. Let's return to the first page, and what we have here is a reference number 1 APD 1880. So this is Region 1 for Scotland, APD, an alternative case for dependents, reference 1880. But what this is the very last page of the 1 APD series. The next ledger, being 1881, is blank because there is nobody after James Heggie who has claimed an alternative pension for dependents in Scotland. So what we have therefore is Ancestry having recorded or taken an image of every subsequent page in this ledger book. So we've got 1882 blank, 1883 blank, 1884 blank, etc., all the way through to the end of the actual 100-page ledger book. So in this instance there are not 43 hits for James Heggie, there's just normal 1 hit plus a series of blank pages as a consequence of Heggie being the last individual who was awarded an alternative pension for dependents in Scotland. So the last thing I want to show you in this particular video is a card. Now this is in anticipation, as I say, of the cards being available during the course of 2019. This particular card is for a chap called Joseph Blackburn, who was in the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, as we can see here. So the point I want to make here is the fact that Joseph Blackburn actually did have a pension awarded to his next of kin, which are detailed down here. Now on the face of it, this is all excellent, and there should be a ledger for this particular individual because he is not from the Region 11 area, which has had so many of the records weeded by the Ministry of Defence. So we'll make a note of this chap's number 25450 and his surname, and we'll search for him using his surname. And we find nothing at all. Now this is not because it's been mistagged or not correctly recorded by Ancestry. There just simply is not a ledger for Joseph Blackburn, no matter how we search. There are 72 hits here, and I have examined these and none of them are for the chap that we're looking for. So the point here is that whilst there is a card, and the card will become available in 2019, I'd ask people not to become despondent if they can't find an individual on the ledgers they are looking for, because he will be found, or hopefully will be found, when the cards are published by Ancestry during 2019. Anyway, I hope you found this of interest, and thanks very much indeed for watching.